hope you guys are having fun being with your family. I know it's been a really long time being locked up in your home, but don't worry, you'll get to go to other places. Just don't worry about it, because God will take care of it. He's gonna take care of everything. You just gotta be faithful. So today we're reading Genesis chapter 37, and it says, "Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, 'Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it.' His brothers said to him, 'Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?' And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told his brothers. 'Listen,' he said, 'I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me.' When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, 'What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?' His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, 'As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them.' 'Very well,' he replied. So he said to him, 'Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me.' Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. 'Here comes that dreamer,' they said to each other. 'Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams.' When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. 'Let's not take his life,' he said. 'Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him.' Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty, and there was no water in it. As they sat down to their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, 'What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood.' His brothers agreed. Now when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, 'The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?' Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, 'We found this. Examine Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph to Egypt to Potiphar, one of the Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard.
Okay, so today's lesson is about Joseph, and we just heard Eliza read the first part of this big story for us. So the story of Joseph is a really big story, and at the end of it, which will come in a couple weeks, we'll really see how God used it for everyone's good, even though it's really hard to see it at the time. And that's the big point that I want you guys to learn from this, that God is with us even when we can't see him and we can't understand why he's doing what he's doing. So let's jump into a little bit. So we see that Joseph is one of 12 sons, right? So he's growing up in a family with 11 brothers. And if that's not bad enough, his dad likes him the best, which means all the other brothers hate him. And he's definitely not the oldest, so he's not the biggest, so he's probably getting made fun of a lot, maybe even beaten up a little bit. And when dad's not looking, they're really letting him feel how much they don't like him. And Joseph's dad, Jacob, who's also named Israel, right? So Jacob is the son of Isaac, who's the son of Abraham. And then at one point, God renamed Jacob to Israel. And then his 12 sons kick off the 12 tribes of Israel. And that they become the people called the Israelites. So Israel, or Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. So not only is he loving him more, but he's also showing it by giving this really nice gift. And so his brothers are not happy with that. And then Joseph doesn't help himself because he has dreams in which it sounds like he thinks he's going to be king. And they're like, yeah, that's not cool. And then he has another one where the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to him. And his parents are like, oh, okay, so you think we're going to be bowing down to you too. So he's kind of in a tight spot because he can't really help that he's having these dreams. But he doesn't seem to be stopping himself from telling everybody about what he thinks it means. And so basically, none of his brothers like him and are out to get him. And then at one point, their dad, Jacob, Mr. Israel, says, all right, go check on your brothers. They're taking care of the flocks, right? Because they're shepherds. And so then he says, go and see if all is well with your brothers and bring word back to me. And then we skip this part just because it's like a random conversation. So they see him. Oh, here it is. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. And when they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him because they realized, maybe this is our chance. We don't like him. Maybe this is our chance to get rid of him. Which is a pretty bad thing for brothers to do, right? I mean, hopefully nobody in your family's plotting to kill you or throw you into a pit. But obviously, there's some serious family drama going on here, some big problems. And it's hard to wonder, or it's hard not to wonder, where is God in all this? Like, this is some seriously bad stuff going on. Why isn't God stepping in? Well, that's what this story is here to teach us. So they say, let's kill him and throw him into one of these wells. That's what a cistern is a well. And then Reuben's the oldest son. He goes, no, let's not kill him. But just throw him in the well and leave him. Which basically is killing him. Because if you leave somebody in a ditch in the wilderness, they're not going to last much longer. But they throw him in the cistern, and then they sit down to eat, and then they realize that there's some slave traders coming by, and so they're like, how about we send or sell him to these slave traders? And then so they do that. They sell him to the slave traders, get some money out of it, and then Joseph gets taken down to Egypt. And then they try to cover it up. They say, all right, we'll take his robe, and so they sold him, and then they took his robe, put some goat blood on it, and pretended that an animal had killed Joseph, and then they bring it back to their father, and they're like, look, he was killed by a wild animal. So, again, pretty horrible thing that these guys have done, and it sort of begs the question, where is God in all this? Why did he allow Joseph to be treated so poorly by his brothers? Why didn't he just stop Joseph having those dreams? Or why couldn't he make Jacob love his other sons too? And so it's sort of weird, and it's hard to understand why would God allow this. But what we're going to see as we look ahead in the story is that there's a lot of stuff coming that's bigger than all that's going on here. And God is putting a plan into motion that protects everybody, protects thousands of people. And it teaches Joseph a lesson too. So while it sometimes feels like what we're going through, it feels like, how could God possibly be good in this? How could God possibly want this to happen? And maybe you feel like that right now with this virus, and like, why in the world is this happening? Why does God allow this to happen? Why are people getting sick? And sometimes we just don't know the answer, but we can look to stories like this and see, as we will in the next couple weeks, how God is in the story, and he's doing stuff with a purpose, with a bigger reason that we can't always understand. And so I want to encourage you with that. This is just the first part. Right now it looks pretty bad, and maybe that's how you feel right now. But in the end, God has a bigger and better plan than we can ever understand or hope to see right now. So trust in that.